Welcome to the More Business, More Life podcast. Today it's myself and Jovanni Casaus, and we're going to talk about life by design. It's been a big topic right now in 2020. Many of us are questioning our lives, questioning what we're doing, starting to see how precious life is and how important it is to do what we want. But then some of us are saying, well, hey, I've got to make money and I got to do all these financial things and it restricts me from having the life that I want. How do we deal with this? How do we start planning our life and then building our abundance around that? And we're not going to answer all the questions today, but we're definitely going to pinpoint some of the big chunks for Jovanni and I, how we start to live life now. Let's listen in. So I think what prompted our conversation on this is just, with everything going on in the world, right now, there's so much change. And I've seen so many folks, reaching for whatever they can, and rightfully so, right? Like our first instinct is to survive, right? So we grab that. But I think now, as this is, extended and everything that's happened in 2020, now folks are saying, well, what do I really want? It's kind of been a huge wake-up call to say, oh, I've been in this job, but it's really not what I want. Or, I've got to rethink my business, but do I want to? I've had some business owners that are like, maybe this is the time for me to start a new business, which sounds crazy in COVID, but people are finding that they're not necessarily happy with where they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's as odd as it might sound, is a silver lining, right?
Absolutely. It's being grateful in all the moments. I was just talking to one of my clients earlier today, and she was saying that, one of her biggest clients lost an employee, and then now everything's kind of falling apart, and then just starting to realize that client hasn't been a wow client and it's causing all kinds of grief. And then, really makes you think of like what you want, so it could be like clients. It could be, I've even talked to people and they actually realize they do not like the house they live in. They were always working, so they never did. But now having to be in quarantine and, shelter in place, they're like, wait a minute, I don't like this house. And so people have actually decided to like move. I mean, so many things. But I guess the root of this conversation is that, I find the silver lining overall, going back to that word silver lining, is that people are saying, wait, what do I want?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think it's just changed. Just the same thing, like me noticing other people as they're talking with friends, and like, it's interesting. I was having a conversation with a friend, and she's nannied in the past, and she was talking about how like this time has actually been good for parents to be parents, because otherwise it's just like they send their kids off, or some of them have nannies where their nannies are taking care of the kids, right? Raising the kids essentially. And like this time has forced parents to be parents again, to like take responsibility of their kids and everything. And it's just interesting on all levels that I've just noticed that people are asking that question, like, what is it that I want? Right.
Yeah. Which is such a beautiful question. And I get you. And, you brought me to one thing, and then I want to talk about what do you want? But, the thing we've been complimented a lot about our kids, and we spent a lot of time with our kids, and people say, how do you do it? Like, what are you doing different? And then, and I wasn't trying to be, sarcastic or anything when I said this, but the first time someone asked me, they're like, what are you doing? Like, I could see a difference in your kids compared to other kids. And they're like, what are you doing? And I said, and it just popped in my head right away. And I think you know me well enough, Jovanni, I kind of just say what comes in my mind, which is good or bad sometimes. But I said, we pay attention to them. And then they started laughing, and I didn't think it was a joke. I was like, no, I'm serious. I'm serious. We pay attention to them. And he's like, oh my gosh. I was like, really? That's what we do? We pay attention to them? Because I mean, yeah, you're totally right. And it's not like parents want to be that way and push their kids to the side. I mean, the reality is that, life happens. And then by the time you get home, you're tired from work and all these things. It's not like you intend to wake up and screw with your kids,
Yeah.
So,
well, they're probably doing it out of love, right? I mean, they're trying to provide. So they're working hard so they can provide a certain kind of future for their kids. And so it's out of love, but but there's always that fast thing, right? That's what we're always talking about, like slowing down and enjoying and creating your life and everything like that. But yeah.
So it comes back to that question of why. So I think the silver lining that we keep coming back to is that people are asking, what do they want? And that is the start. I mean, Simon Sinek said it so well, start with why. It just is exactly true. And, and this goes back to the whole no pain, no gain thing that I always poke at. When there's pain, I find like we're on the wrong path. And so it's an indicator to, get on the right path. It doesn't mean give up on our dreams, but you have to kind of know where you're going to make any map. So if you're just doing, it comes back, if you're doing something and you're not sure why you're doing it, you have to ask yourself, well, what does having this do for me? That's the golden question that you learn in neurolinguistics, right? Like, what will having that do for you? And then when you can get to the root of why you're doing anything, because typically there's a good reason. Like, why do you have the job? So if someone says, I'm not happy with the job I have. Okay, well, what does having that job do for you? And then you start going down. It's like, oh, well, it just provides us money. Okay, so the only reason you have this job is for money. Yes. Okay, then now we can say, okay, well, are there other ways that you can make money?
Yeah.
You're separating what's going on in your life with actually what the objective is. But when we can actually have the objective and what you're doing align with what your desire is, then that's where we can have a win and we can have a shift, So I always say life is by design. So if you don't like it, then start redesigning it. Like right now, I won't even do it, but I have actually, I guess I will. I'll just, it's kind of I've got a whole bunch of papers over here, not normal, but I've got all these weeks. And this is from like 2017. My son made fun of me, but this is like the same thing from 2017 that I've been printing. It's like just a weekly calendar. And I literally draw on here, and I don't print a whole lot of stuff these days, but this I printed out because I wanted to like walk around the house. Sometimes sitting on the couch. I've taken this outside while I'm drinking some cacao, and I've been like designing what I want 2020 to look like on a weekly basis. And like, how many weeks do I want to take off? And all of these different things. And so that's what I literally mean by design. And I even just yesterday, Sunday, we're recording this on a Monday, but on Sunday, I was just having a conversation with my family. I'm like, hey, this is what Dad's thinking. What do you want? And making sure I include everyone in that. So I guess for me, this is an exciting time. I've done this for many years, but now I see a lot of people around me that have not operated this way. They're asking a lot more questions. So that is exciting to me. But I guess what I would say to everyone is, first ask yourself what you would like, and then ask yourself, now, how can I have that? And don't get caught up in the how. Find what you want. And then if things don't go the way you want, then that's where you just keep adjusting the how. It's iterative. Does that make sense? I mean, if you think people look at me and they're like, wow, Steve, you have the life, man. You're, living in the woods, you have your kids, you've been traveling, like we get all these things, and it's all been by design, and I'm still designing it. I'm still figuring out things that could be better,
Yeah. It's like that whole, like when I first started like my photography and I was learning about business and everything like that, there's like what you track gets measured, right? What you're measuring, you can quantify essentially. It was said way better than that, but essentially, but it's like the same thing with your life, right? If you're not choosing or creating what it is, then like you'll just get whatever it is. Because I remember I used to say, like, I think we were very similar on this part. We would go like, oh, I just kind of like go with the flow, go wherever the wind takes me. Well, if the wind's taking you to to a waterfall or over a cliff or something like that, is that really the best thing? It's like best to, yes, go with the flow, but have control of where it actually takes you, right? So if you're on the water and you're sailing, like you have the sail, you have the rudder, you have all that other stuff to make you go where you want to go. Or if you're paddling, right, you have that control, like, yes, go with it, but also make sure you're going on the path that you want to go on, rather than it just kind of taking you to whatever random path. And maybe the random path works for you, but then maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But like, I'd rather have that control to be on the path that I want to be on.
Well, and I think it's a mix. I mean, this is fascinating. I'm glad you're bringing this up because, if you go with whitewater rafting, right, you're going to want to use the rapids. You're going to want to use the current to take you down the river, but you're still going to have to paddle to avoid the rocks and disaster, right? Like if you just get in the boat and have no oar and be like, okay, world, take me where you want. then you're most likely high chance, because the water, the way that it takes you, is going to pull you right towards some of those rocks, and then you're going to have a crash. So it's, there is a mix. Now, if you wanted to row up the river, you could do it. It's not impossible, but it's going to be way 10 times, 20 times harder to go up the river. So it's kind of using both. And I often find that freedom is only lasts so long without some structure. That's why I always say structured freedom, because the thing about it, if you do that, you're like, okay, let the world take me where it goes, and then all of a sudden it rams you into a rock, or you're the feather blowing in the wind, and then it takes you off of a waterfall or off a cliff or something. Then how far do you go of letting go? It is this massive, it's like an art. It's like reaching while letting go at the same time. And even if you want that freedom, like I love those days where you don't know what you're gonna do. One time my son and I went into San Francisco, and we just got out of our car, we parked, and that we started in North Beach so we can get a cannoli. And then that's important. So we had a cannoli, and then our plan was, this is all we had. So we did have a bit of structure, but we said, okay, we're just going to walk. And if we see a restaurant that seems like we would like it, we'll go in and we'll order one thing, and then we'll taste it, and then we'll go on. And I don't remember, we went over a dozen different restaurants, and we ended up walking like 7 to 10 miles. It might've been 10 miles. I can't remember now. I think my son will remember. I'll have to ask him, but we walked forever, so far that by the time we finally turned back to go back to the car, we had to Uber back, to get back to the car. But we just walked and had great conversation. So it was a total free day, but we did create a little game of it. We're like, okay, if either of us see a restaurant we like, we'll just go in, order one thing, and share it. So in that same thing, in that day of free flow, there was still some structure. And then I want to go even meta to that. So if we like zoom out, to even have a day like that, I had to have structure in my business so I could take days off. Right. So if you want one day off here, or you want to just take off, how long will that last till the bank account goes down? Or how long can you go down a river without an oar until you break your boat? But if you actually have the oar and you paddle a little bit, or if you have a business that you create strategic residual income, then you could go on trips for years and be nomadic. But there's always some structure, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I think that's hard for a lot of people to conceptualize. I know you've told stories, and I think I've even just heard people like, well, then how are you gonna, if it's so scheduled out, how do you have room for anything? Well, you're the one who creates the schedule, so you have you put what's there. If you don't like what's on your calendar, you're the one who's in control of it. And yeah,
it's so funny. You just brought something up. I think the only time, very rare, like, I think this is one of the only, I've giggled a little bit, but in meditation, I'm in a meditation, I laughed out loud. It pretty much like broke my meditation. And this is what happened. I got into a meditative state, and I kind of have conversations with my higher self many times, not every meditation, but a lot of them. And I'm there. And so I'm in this deep state, and I ask myself, because one of my things is to continue to be a better father, to be a better husband, to be a better family man. And I asked, how do I have more time with my family? And then this loud voice in my head says, schedule it. And I'm like, busted up laughing. I'm like, of course, schedule it. Like, duh. And I'm like, this like profound moment. I'm meditating. I'm getting into the state. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to get this deep wisdom. It's going to tell me what to do. And you know what? It was deep wisdom. Schedule it. It's that freaking simple. And you know what? When I schedule my kids on my calendar, when I schedule time with my wife, when I schedule family time, then we have it. And if that means, and we're even talking about this, Jovanni, for 2021, because we used to travel for a whole month, so we would like be home for 2 or 3 months, and then we'd go for a month and go to Australia and then I'd still work, but I would like modify my work schedule, and then I'd be able to travel, and with everything going on in the world, that's not possible. So now we're like, okay, this 2020, I didn't take as many chunks of time off. I took a lot of long weekends and different things, but so I was like, okay, do we want to take 1 week off a month? Or 2 weeks off every 2 months, or 3 weeks off every 3 months? What should Dad do? And then the answer was a little bit, all of it. So like, a couple times, let's take 3 weeks, a couple times, let's take 1 week, let's mix and match. And so that's what we're going to do. And so I've been working on the calendar for 2021, and Our goal is this week to finalize it, but we've made a lot of headway. But that's what we're going to do. And again, it's all by design. But those weeks, we can have it really structured. Like one time we were in Barcelona and my wife planned a whole thing for the whole day. We woke up in the morning and had these amazing pastries I've never had before. Like and I'm not the big sugar guy, as most people know, but I will definitely have another one when I go back to Barcelona. Amazing stuff. And she mapped this whole thing out and it was very structured, but it was an amazing day. And then other times we have no structure and we just lounge around, and that's an amazing day. So, try it all out. But again, it's by design. And some people love to have that schedule, and they have the next thing. And some people, they don't want that as much. So that's okay. That's okay too. And so back to the point of what you're making, Jovanni, is like you plan it out. So if you like want a whole Saturday to do whatever the heck you want, then that's by design. So even if you're not designing, you're designing. I would argue that you're already designing it.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think it's taken me some time, and I'm still in transition of fully planning out all my stuff, because I'm the person. I'm not a schedule like blah 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 blah. Like, especially when I travel, I love just like, okay, let me get a map and let's just start walking around and see what we discover. But as I'm getting older and things are changing in life, like it's like, okay, we do need a little bit of structure. And when we have that little bit of structure, it does seem that jury's still out for me, but it does seem that things go a little bit smoother and we at least have a direction of where we're going. Whereas just like, all right, let's just go in any direction. And you're like, well, what are we going to do? And then sometimes it's like, well, what are we going to do? And then we just sit there. You don't have anything planned because like you get overwhelmed with too much stuff, too many choices or anything like that.
I think you're good with that, Jovanni. Just be.
Yeah.
Just interjecting. Go ahead. I think.
No, yeah. What I was going to ask is, well, what about people who, because I could have saw this when I was working like for a company or something like that, and like I had a schedule that I had to be on. Like, how would you suggest people start scheduling their time when they already have like they can't take off? Just like they can't schedule like a Wednesday day off or something or whatnot. What would you suggest for people like that?
You're saying they have a job and they're supposed to be there on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, you have to question if for people don't ask enough. Like, are you sure you have to work on Wednesdays? Are you really, really, really sure? Because, if you actually asked and then, and this is the thing I always say, what does your job want? What does your boss want? What does your company want? What is their intention? It goes back to what will having that do for you? That question we brought up earlier in this podcast. What will having that do for you? If you start asking those questions and you can produce the result that your boss or your company wants without you being there on Wednesday, you probably have a good argument to be able to start taking those Wednesdays off. Now, that may not be plausible. Then you have to ask yourself, if having Wednesdays off by design is what you really want, then you have to question the job. There are other ways to work. And if you feel, stuck, just start really asking questions. And then usually there's some other fears like, oh my gosh, if I let go of this job, then I won't have money. Those are all fears. That's getting outside of your comfort zone, most likely. And you have to work through that, and getting some help with that also helps. I mean, the thing for me is definitely having mentors to help me guide and navigate, because most of the time we get out in the open world. I usually tell this fishbowl story. There's this boy that goes to the pet store with his mom, and then basically they get to the pet store, they're getting dog food, and the boy's like, "Mom, I want this fish," and the mom's like, "No, we're not getting a fish. We came here for the dog food." And the boy's like, "No, Mom, I really, really want the fish." And he keeps asking and asking. And finally she says, "Okay, listen, if I get you the fish, then you have to promise you're going to feed the fish every day and you're going to clean the bowl once a week." And he says, "I promise, Mom, I promise." So the week goes by and the boy, he does it. He feeds the fish every day. And at the end of the week, the mom says, "Okay, it's time to clean the bowl." And so then they go into the bathroom and the mom plugs the tub and fills it up and moves the fish into the tub. And then she shows him how to clean the bowl. And she walks out of the bathroom for a minute, and not even the minute goes by. And the boy runs out of the bathroom. "Mom, the fish, the fish." She like runs back in there with him. She's like, "Oh my gosh, he pulled the plug. What happened?" Goes into the bathroom, plugs there, tub's full of water, fish is swimming there in a little circle. And then the mom's like, what's going on? There's the fish swimming. No, mom, something's wrong. The fish has all this water and it's just swimming in this little circle. And then that's when the mom says, oh, I see. You see that fish only knows the bowl. So it doesn't recognize that. And that's kind of like the world, so, when we feel restrained, it's probably our own creation, our glass bowl that we create for ourselves. So what I would say to your question, Jovanni, back to being direct, is just ask yourself a heck of a lot more questions, if you really want Wednesdays off, then you start backtracking from there. Like, how can I design a job? When I was in college, I wanted to finish college and I had a full-time job. I put myself through college and I had to ask many times, and they were not happy at first because they were like a Monday through Friday, regular work hours. And I had to negotiate to come in early. And then I wasn't even at the level to have a key to the office. So that was a big deal. I had to ask for early access so I could come in and put my work hours in before. And then I had to work on Saturdays, which they didn't normally allow. And I had to ask all these things so that I could go to school and finish my college while I was working. And, and they didn't like it. I know at the beginning, but I listened to what they needed. And I think they knew that my college was that important to me, that they realized, hey, if we either accommodate and keep this employee or, and if they would have said no, I think I wasn't like a career thing for me, Jovanni. It wasn't like the job of my dreams either. I was restoring cappuccino machines. So it was like just a freaking job, And so I think they knew I would have left, so. But I know there's fear. I know, because especially right now, people are like, what are you talking about? Leave your job. We're not saying that. I don't think Jovanni's saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying question what you're doing and then ask yourself to design. And even those days that you like, Jovanni, I like those days too. And that's what I wanted to add. Like, just be you. I think that's a missing thing. And I really see it with my kids. I'm very sensitive to it. Like when they say I'm bored, then I'm like, that's the creative time, like I want them. So I encourage them to be bored, like because if they're in device after device, they could easily do that. If I would allow that, like just get sucked in, as we do too. How many adults get sucked into Facebook and Instagram, and all of a sudden time just flies by. But you know what? Going outside and having my lunch and just watching, I have lizards on the ground during the summertime, or I watch the birds, things I never used to do. I was such a workaholic boy from Silicon Valley, workaholic. And, thankfully for my wife, she used to always say that saying, you got to stop and smell the roses. She kept telling me that. I didn't listen to her for years. But it is true. So keep doing what you're doing, Jovanni. Like, keep taking a day and wander around, because we didn't do that schedule. We were in Barcelona for a week. We didn't do that every day. We did one day where she scheduled everything, and it was cool. Like, I would have originally, and you would have been the same. I was like, oh, like, I guarantee I'll tell you, this is my reaction. We're like getting up, and she had us get up extra early that day. Like, oh, and I'll do that when we're going to the airport to catch a flight, but just to do that, I'm like, and I even did a short meditation, and I like went. But I won't give up that day. It was an amazing day. She does this to me. She blows it away. And I'm like, wow, that's why you schedule so much. Wow. When we had all this cool stuff I would have never done. And then at the end of the day, I felt like I lived like 3 days because she put so much into there. But then she knows me, and she knows there's no way I'll have that every day. So then another day we just did whatever we want, So
Barcelona is a great place to do whatever you want. So
you can get lost for sure for hours and hours. So anyway, I know we got to wrap up, but I'm basically what I'm saying is you want both, Jovanni. Yeah. You want both, and you want to design that. And so if you want a whole Saturday or a whole Wednesday off, then ask yourself how you can have that, and keep asking that until you find the way. Don't get caught up on the how. Yeah. Stick to your dream, and then allow the how to keep changing. Allow for yourself flexibility to try different things. And right now, during this point in our life where we're really realizing what's important to us, living is important to us. Having time with our family is important to us. Having time with your friends is important to us, especially when we've been so separated. So design the life that you want. And then if you don't know how to do it, then ask people, find people that have done it before, get some mentorship, get some coaching, and then just keep asking yourself, how do I do this? How do I do this? Because sometimes you'll find the answer yourself. So start with the design, put what you want down on paper, even if you don't know how you're going to do it, and then and then keep asking questions and find other people that have done it, ask lots of questions, search on YouTube, do everything you can. Because what do you have to lose? Your life. You're going to lose. It's going to go by. And then one day you'll be like, man, I wish I would have done that. And I don't want to live with that. And I know you don't either, Jovanni. So that would be what I would say, brother.
Yeah, fully agree. I challenge you listening, schedule your time, your free time.
Yeah. Even if it just says free time.
Yeah. I was saying, you always say, like everybody schedules their work time, right? And then they try to fit their life in. What, you listening person right now, what if you scheduled your life first and then schedule work around that? How would that change your life?
Plan your fun first. Fun first. And then everything, my wife's mother passed away at a young age. And, she used to always say, eat your dessert first. Life's too short. And you know what? I'm so glad that she always did that, because she did have a short life. She did pass away at a young age. She was 48 years old when she passed away, like crazy. Yeah. And she must have known or whatever. But also, it doesn't matter if you live 48 years or 84 years or whatever, 90, 100 years. Live. When's a good time to live? In closing, I know we got to wrap up. So here's my closing. When in your life do you get to rewind and say, start over? It's like, you go through life and then you're like, okay, now I'm going to rewind and start over. That's not the way that it's going to happen. So just live now, right now, choose what you want, and then just start asking how to have it. So I hope some good nuggets came out of this. It's changed my life. And I know, Jovanni, you've been doing the same. So it's amazing. It's amazing. As always, remember to choose gratitude and create freedom. And Jovanni and I and all our guests and everything, we'll see you on the next show. Thanks so much for listening in. Thanks for listening to the More Business, More Life podcast. I hope you got value. And if you did, we have so many more things for you at stevenapolitan.com. You'll be able to connect with us on social media. We are active. You can ask us questions. And then on top of that, I want to give you a really big gift. And it truly is. We want to give so much value. We have an offering. It's a program called Clear Path to Customers. It's the same way that we attract wow clients and only working with the right people, the people we want to. And it's transformed my business into millions more in revenue with the right people and my clients. And we're doing it absolutely free. So you can go to stevenapolitan.com and grab that. You just got to put in your information. We'll send it to you promptly. And that again is on stevenapolitan.com. I look forward to having you on the next show. Until then, remember, choose gratitude and create freedom.